Hi, I'm Diane and I volunteer in canine enrichment. I think it was 14, nearly 15 years ago, I started in dog socialization, and then the last 2 years I've been doing more in the enrichment area. I'd grown up my whole life with dogs around me. My father was a police officer, so I grew up with police dogs around me. As a young person, I volunteered for guide dogs for the blind as a dog walker. So when the dog was off duty, I could take them to the beach and let them run and play. And then living in Canada, I'd always had dogs. And when my last dog passed away, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to live on an acreage or move into the city, whether I wanted to get another dog or not. And it was actually my daughter suggested, why not volunteer and just see what you want. And so I started volunteering here. So my typical day when I'm volunteering is I come in, I usually check and see if there are any small dogs that I can manage to walk, so that I will combine socialization and enrichment that day. Once I've either determined there are no small dogs or I've taken one out for a walk, then I will go and see what enrichment needs to be handed out to the dogs that day and go around the kennels and give them all their treats. And then I go back and look at what do we need to make for the next day. And I start putting together the enrichment activities for the following day. And then usually I look at what stock do we have in the enrichment room and go back to the back area, which we call Costco, and get any extra pieces that we need in the enrichment room, make sure we're fully stocked. I think feeling that perhaps I'm helping contribute to that dog getting a decent home and getting a forever home, just by being with them and letting them experience different people. I think sometimes the hardest part about volunteering is walking away after a shift and not rescuing at least one of the dogs. But you have to toughen up, and I just tell myself if I rescue one, I won't be able to help a lot of others. I think the most memorable animal I've worked with at the shelter was actually, I'm going to say about 6 years ago. It was a dog with a very unimaginative name of Fluffy. She was a great big white ball of fur. Super nice personality, very loving dog. I took her out for a walk and she walked beautifully on the leash, very well mannered. Sat down out by the pond and she was up on the bench beside me wanting to cuddle. And then I went to bring her back in the kennel. And she laid down on the path out there and absolutely refused to move. There were no other volunteers at that afternoon for whatever reason. I sat out there for nearly an hour and a half before somebody else came with another dog, and I was able to say, please go and get me some help. And behaviour had to come and carry her back to her kennel. "14 years ago, on a very cold February morning, I was living on an acreage and my granddaughter heard a little squeaking noise. And she said, Nana, there's something outside. And I said, oh, it's probably a squirrel or a bird. And a few minutes later, she said, no, Nana, there is something there. So I went and opened the door and there was a little black kitten with a broken leg. I didn't know it was broken at the time, but you could see that it was injured. Very tiny and sitting on my doorstep, and she's adopted me. So I took her in. I made posters and put up posters, took her to the vet, got her leg operated on and fixed. And yeah, she's just my little shadow. I do more volunteering when I'm not volunteering here. I walk a dog for a group called Elder Dog Canada. I walk a little dog for them once a week. I do stained glass, which I'm passionate about. And I also run a group called Craft for YEG, which has 700 plus members, and we support 12 charities, including the Humane Society. Why I enjoy my work is a mixture of the animals I get to meet, the people I get to meet, and just that sense you go home feeling you've contributed something, you're making a difference. And coming in here always feels like I'm coming home. You always feel very welcome here, and I would recommend it to everybody.